Bill Dicus is with the cattle company, and it's his company that has the property, and some of you met him at the planning meeting at Pima County. So with that, Bill, it's all
Thank
yours.
you. I recognize most faces, and I thank you very much for coming. I've wound up getting into a couple of conversations. One gentleman had started out very passionately, and now we've actually, I think, gotten to a meeting of the minds to understand kind of where we're coming from. And I'm almost a bit dispassionate about the process, so if after we talk and you look at what we have to say and you say, you know, Bill, I think you're all wet, I don't like your idea, we're against it, that's fine. You know, we live in a democracy, and this is the way the process works, so I won't take it personally or begrudge anybody for any opinion. I'm trying to make a case that having planning is going to be in the best interest of the neighborhood and the community. In my view, and granted it's from a developer's perspective, there's a lot of roadblocks and hurdles to the planning process. But when in fact, if you look at communities, planning is very important in order to stop certain things like wildcat subdivisions and inappropriate uses. So we started the process to go towards the comprehensive plan and get a use, something other than what is available, which would be 5 homes on the site, a lot of agricultural uses, and a church. People have said, well, are you threatening? And the answer is no, we're not threatening. There's a parcel with 1,000 feet of frontage on Cortaro that has value. And the value is going to be to somebody who wants a marketing window on Cortaro Farms, and the likely use is a church. If it winds up, and that would be the only logical economic sale that we would make. We wouldn't sell it. I can't imagine that somebody in this market environment, or a market environment even in 20 years, would say, I want to have my dream home on 3.3 acres with 40,000 cars by that time rushing past it. It's just not going to happen. You know, cattle ranch obviously is not going to happen either, so it gets back to church. When we bought the property about 2.5 years ago, we looked at coming to a development plan, and we talked to Ann Day's office, and Ann Day's office, a gal there, said, well, we won't do anything unless the Sonoran Conservation Group is behind it. So you got to talk to Carolyn Campbell at the environmentalist group and get their blessing. So I met with Carolyn and basically said, do you like the environment more than you dislike developers? And she said, oh, we don't have a problem with development. We are here for to preserve the environment. So I said, great, well, we can work together. She said, great, get a plan. We got a plan, and we started working that process out. At a certain point in time, it became apparent their view was we could only touch 80%. We could only, if we wanted to rezone the property, we could only use about 20% of the property. Well, unless we could get an oil well on that 20%, there wouldn't be a development plan that we would submit that would create more value with all the brain damage in order to get a rezone. So different things, we actually started working with Carolyn to sell the property to the county. But by that time, we'd kind of gotten so kind of put off from the development process that we actually did start looking for church sales, and we did sell a property to a church. And that's what the exempted piece, the 5.4. 2.5 years later, I regret a lot of things that wound up happening in the process. You know, I wish that I could have worked with her. We're basically back to the same spot. And the question is, will there be a development plan that will have buffer set-asides that, in my view, would be better for the neighborhood and the community, or will it wind up selling to a church? And you as the neighbors and we as the community all have an ability to make a decision as to what's in our own enlightened self-interest. You and I may or may not agree with what we believe is in our own interest, but you know, that's the way America works, and that's human nature. So what I am trying to sell to you in my handout, which